Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Rashbi in the house. Rabbi Stephen, Rabbi Shmuel ben Yehoshua coming to you with this week's 10-Minute Torah. This week's 10-Minute Torah is, yes, it is Passover. And we have a special Torah reading this week because Passover falls on Shabbat. The first day of Passover is on Shabbat. So instead of the regular, we interrupt this regular Torah portion sequence to bring you a special presentation. That's basically what it is. And since Pesach is, that's right, 8 days out here in exile, we also have the last day of Passover is also Shabbat, special Torah reading for there. And we'll get to that in a minute, but first I have to do a shout out. I have to do a shout out to all the people that came Saturday morning. It was, folks, we had 18 adult males there. We had like 20 people. You know, we had, Steve Fogelman, new person, brought his beatbox. Alana and David came. Alana played the violin. This is what Saturday morning services was. We had a little band going. And, of course, Irv, great, glad to see you there. And the Cohn family, couldn't do it without you. Bob and Lynn Kaplan. Bob's our ritual chair, and, you know, he's always there like clockwork. Appreciate that. Becky and Dave, you know, always a pleasure. And Larry and Esmeralda Chalfant, and Ian and Noah, and of course Esmeralda, I have to say from now on, Dr. Chalfant, that's right, defended her dissertation. So yes, there is a doctor in the house, 2 doctors, because Dave is a doctor too. So it was awesome, it was wonderful, and that's really what we want to do. You know, we could talk about halacha, and you know, let's face it, Pesach, which is coming up, is all about halacha, right? It's all about the food. It's about a special diet. It's about doing things it's about spring cleaning. That's how spring cleaning came about. Looking for the chametz, making sure your house has no yeast in it, right? And by the way, why do we do that? Okay, so way back when, right? You know, yogurt was discovered in the Middle East. You know, bread was discovered in the Middle East. They didn't know about yeast. They just left it out, and there was so much yeast around in the area, right? Where does it come from? And they found that, you know, milk would spoil, and then left out at 110 degrees, bam, 8 hours later or so, you had yogurt. And same thing with bread. You know, they'd make the bread, and, you know, the yeast would just creep into the dough, and bam, you know, it would rise and everything, right? So that's why we do the spring cleaning. That's why we do the search for chametz. We go around the house and we vacuum everything, and it's kind of like a symbolic gesture to clear your house of the chametz. Now, there's also a symbolism there. It's not just, you know, Pesach, they had to put the clothes on their back, and, you know, they spent the night with the Passover sacrifice. What it was, it's now a sacrifice, right, with the Passover meal, the feast, and then they left during the day. They just put everything on their back, and bam, out they went. Okay, but the idea of leavening too, right? And this is why when they do sacrifices, the accompaniment, the mincha, the offering, the grain offering, is always the flatbread. And I don't mean flatbread that you get at Costco where it's just, you know, kind of a little. No, this is you roll it, you put it in, and with it, and it has to be done within, like, I think it's 15 or 20 minutes. You got to pull that stuff out. You got to pull the dough out and bake it, or else, you know, it starts to rise. And what they did was they would just bake the bread, put it on their backs. They'd be marching out into the wilderness in the hot sun, and the bread would bake, or the dough would break into matzah. But the idea too of leavening, all right, the reason why the flatbread, the matzah, is accompanying the sacrifices is because the idea of leavening, the symbolism is arrogance. You know, someone who is full of themselves, someone whose ego has risen, so to speak. See, that's the whole idea. That's the idea of leavening. That's another issue. So what we're doing now is we're humbling ourselves in front of Hashem by being the flatbread, by not rising, by not letting our egos get overblown. See, so that's part of the symbolism of Passover, and that's why we have the stringent observance. Now, there are certain restrictions that we have. Corn, never really understood that. I have no problem with corn personally, and you know, the Rabbinical Assembly has come out with certain leniencies. Some of us are we have to ease into it. I don't know if we can go just from 0 to 60 in 1 year, you know, not eating beans and rice to eating beans and rice. You know, beans, in my mind, take longer to rise than bread. You know, if you've ever cooked beans from scratch, you know, when I was a kid in college, we belonged to a co-op, used to get beans, and you'd have to soak them overnight. You'd have to cook them, let them boil, and then you soak them overnight, and then it's like 2 or 3 hours to get the beans going. You know, if bread takes about 4 hours to make, or 3 hours, whatever it is, then certainly these other foods are more of a leavened product. And by the way, yogurt, personally, as a rabbi in charge of halakha and kashrut, I wouldn't allow yogurt, because yogurt, it's the acidophilus. That's what makes the yogurt yog, and it's like a 7-8 hour process for milk to become yogurt. In my mind, it's the same type of leavening process. Now, is it an inconvenience? You bet. And that's really part of it. Judaism is kind of an in-your-face religion. That's how we do things. We learn by doing. We go through the motions. We relive what our ancestors did, and that way we fully appreciate what Hashem did for us. Now, this week's Torah portion comes from Exodus. It's when Moses and them are starting to leave the Egypt. And basically, it's Moses is giving instructions to Ziknei Yisrael, the elders, Ziknei, Zaken. By the way, Zaken means elder. It also means beard, Zaken. So he's telling them, this is what you will do. Everybody slaughters a lamb. Why a lamb? Because a lamb is a docile animal. Or the sheep, or the goat, the sheep. You're basically sacrificing a docile animal, and the symbolism is that we're going to acquiesce to Hashem. We're going to go along with Hashem's commandments now. So we have the Pesach offering, the lamb offering, and that's the idea of the shank bone in the Seder plate. We don't do anything with it; it's there as a symbol, as is everything else around the Seder plate. So we're going to acquiesce. We're going to give ourselves over to Hashem. We're going to accept the commandments. We're going to be His people. And Hashem is taking us out of bondage through this idea of the plagues, by doing the plagues, by breaking the back of Pharaoh so that he will let us go. And this was an example to the rest of the world that we're God's chosen people. Why are we God's chosen people? Because we chose God. God said, here's these commandments, and the people said, we will do and we will hear. They said we will do before we even heard it. That's our dedication. That is how we, the Israelites, the Jews of today, have earned the right to have the Torah. And we are priests among nations. We are examples. Now, many people, the question comes up every now and then, why is there so much anti-Semitism in the world? One of the reasons, if you notice, the eyes of the world are upon us because we're examples. We have to be better than everyone else. You look at the Israeli army, the things that they do to restrain themselves from an all-out attack after having missiles fired, because we believe in the higher things of mankind. We believe in the higher characteristics of mankind. We go for we take the high road, let's face it. And as a result, now a lot of the world is starting to come to us. And this is the idea of us being a priestly nation. Okay? The fact is, God showed the world that we are His people because we chose Him. That all this idea of paganry and the idols and all this, and worshiping the sun and trees and all this other, it's not God. There's only one God. And it's hard to conceive of God. But it's the same God that smote the Egyptian firstborn and pulled us out of Egypt. So somebody asked once, I think it was you, Bob Rieger, we're going through the Torah. And the portion, Bo, which is where this is from, was a portion that we read months ago, right around, December or so. And why did we read it then when Passover is now? So this is what we do on the holidays, okay? We're going through the flow of the Torah. But now that it's a special day, it's a special holiday, again, we interrupt the flow and we go back to that portion that spoke about Pesach, so that we're wrapping our heads around Passover at this time, in the time of the spring, which is when Pesach comes. So we change it in order to focus. Instead of just saying, okay, let's have Passover and continue with the Torah reading, this helps us focus on Passover, on the Seder. So we have that special reading. And it talks about, the firstborn. It talks about Hashem and the destroyer coming in. And the Israelites were commanded, once they did the sacrifices, we know, to take some of that blood with the little hyssop plant, which is just a very lowly plant, and it represents humility. But it soaked up the blood, and they put it on the lentils, right? And that way the destroyer knew to come over that house. So here's a question for y'all, all right? Think about this, and maybe we'll discuss it at our second Seder. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Hashem is all-knowing. Why did we have to put blood on the doorpost? He knows who we are, right? Think about why he did that. And I'll give you kind of a hint. Because in Judaism, it is a religion of doing. We don't just like think about it and read about it. We actually do it. So Hashem maybe had to see the dedication. So, like to see all of you at the second Seder. It'll be Saturday evening. We'll start at 6. And we're going to be using these books. Thank you to the Child Funds for suggesting this. It says 30-minute Seder. Full disclosure, it'll probably be a little bit longer. It'll probably be 45 minutes to an hour. But we'll use this, and it's very nice. You see, we've got, it's very user-friendly. We've got all sorts of pictures and a lot of fun. And we're going to see about bringing the guitar. We'll have some music. So please come. It's $40. I know it's a little bit expensive, but, hey, it's a kosher meal. Yes, I'm on the job. I'll make sure it's kosher. And we will be catered. And it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be better than last year, I promise. So want to see you there. Second night Seder. Get your reservations in. And that's why this is coming a little early to give you a little bit of time. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach for Pesach. And again, thanks for coming.